All right, I've got to tee this thing up for Tom Luginbill. We are the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 1059 The Zone. The show is driven by Fowler GMC. If you're looking for a GMC Sierra truck or GMC Yukon, Fowler GMC Pearl Brandon, FowlerGMC.com. Locally owned and operated for 60 years and one hell of a car dealership. Car, truck, SUV dealership, Pearl Brandon, FowlerGMC.com. So we've got a couple of things going on here. You had a in Columbia, Jeff Lebby and his staff did not have a good night. It was a sloppy game. They got sped up. They weren't buttoned up on offense, special teams, or defense. They allowed one guy to go for 300 plus. They were facing a true freshman quarterback that couldn't run it or throw it. Okay, he may be able to at some point, but not right now. All right, at any kind of high level at the SEC Power 4 level. All right, so State fans, we've received several hundred text messages this morning, and they're ticked, and I don't blame them. All right, and there were some poor decisions. We talk about game control, situational football, things like that. Got to get a guy beside you that can do that. On the flip side, Ole Miss is having the best season in the history of their program. And yet we're receiving text where they are irate, more than that. I mean, ticked that Lane hasn't come out and committed to staying. So there's a lot going on in this state. And then not this Friday, but next Friday at 11 a.m. in Starkville, we call it the Tito's Vodka Bloody Mary game, those kickoff times. You got the battle for the golden egg and Dogs hosting Rebs. So we welcome in national college football analyst with ESPN, QB1 at Georgia Tech during his playing days. Tom Luginbill joins us on the show. Luce, good morning. It's crazy here. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great, man.
Just another day in the SEC. All right, let's talk about the magical season that's happening at Ole Miss. It's hard to win. You played at a high level. Lane and Goldie and the crew, Joe Judge, whatever, they're 10 and 1 going into the last game. They're both off this weekend. And everybody's excited. I was there Thursday night, did a show there Friday morning, and they should be. And yet my friends and other people are losing their minds that he will not commit. And he's had every opportunity the last couple of weeks. What's your takeaway on it right now, Tom Luginbill?
Well, they're upset, and I get it. And I know that there's been some talk also about, Ole Miss giving him an ultimatum and essentially saying, hey, we need to know. And you've got signing day right around the corner. Then you go into championship weekend, go almost directly into the playoff, and the transfer portal now, the one-time transfer portal, isn't until January. So, the university has a responsibility to be prepared for that and to be able to come up with a solution so that 5-6 week span there doesn't fall to the wayside. And I get it. I understand that. Lane Kiffin's probably looking to see exactly what the details are and ironing out details if there's a plan in place to make a move and go somewhere else. But from Ole Miss perspective and their fans' perspective, I get it. I mean, you're getting a little nervous with signing day coming around, like I said, and then you go into the playoffs, and you can't afford to find yourself in a situation where you're going, okay, well, who would coach this team in the playoff? Is that coach then going to be our permanent head coach? And if not, you'd be looking at coming out of the playoff, however far you were to go, and having to find a new coach, and then right around the bend is the January transfer portal.
Right.
So it's a time crunch right now. I get it.
All right. He's turned into an unbelievable coach. He's either top 5 or top 10 in the country, Lane Kiffin. His coordinator, in my opinion, has got to be one of the top 10 coordinators, defense coordinators in the country. He's got a really good staff, and he's just hitting on all cylinders. They're going to give him – it won't be money. Both of them will offer him around $15 million a year. You know that, Luke's, right? So it's just about what he wants to do.
It's also about, and maybe this is the most important thing, it's about control, right? Because the one thing he has at Ole Miss, he controls everything.
True.
He controls the transfer portal. He controls name, image, and likeness. Obviously, he's got a very favorable dispersal of the money from the settlement. And are you willing to give up some of that control? Are you willing to take a job where somebody else could trump how it is you want to divvy up money, or who it is you want to target with that money? And that's an important, I mean, a really important category in all of this. And so I think that's probably why this decision for him, if there is one to be made, is so difficult, because right now he controls all of that.
Yeah. Well, he has all the chips. Okay. You know this in life, Luce. I mean, there's times where we have all the chips, and there's times where we have some, and there's times when we have none, whether it's family, business, whatever's going on. He holds all the aces, both with Ole Miss and Florida. And what's going to be fascinating is if he lets this bleed out all the way past the battle for the golden egg. You know what I'm like? I don't know when he's going to say he's going to come back, or he's going to Florida. Is it going to be, I mean, it could be any day now, but if this thing goes all the way through Friday morning and then the game, and then you got Saturday and Sunday, I mean, you know, the timeline gets, like you said, it gets crunched for both Key Carter and Scott Strickland, doesn't it?
Hey, well, absolutely. But not even so much for Scott Strickland, because you know, they're going to have a 1, 2, and a 3. They've been working on this, right?
Sure.
This puts Ole Miss in a bind. You know, Florida's going to have solutions and answers. And if, let's just say, Lane Kiffin were to leave and take that job, they solidified themselves prior to championship weekend and can go into January from a recruiting perspective and a transfer portal preparation perspective and be in great shape. You know, the challenge in all of this is, how would Ole Miss recover if this thing continues to go for another 10 days or so?
That's a good point. Because, like, you could, depending on how it all shakes out, with John Cohen doing a lot of work and LSU and some others, you know, like, if for some reason he leaves, you could miss out on John Summerall, right? Because you haven't been in the same, you haven't been looking and been locked in 100% on a coaching search for as long. You agree?
No, but you know through back channels, Ole Miss is preparing for this departure.
Fair enough.
They've made overtures. Okay. They've reached out to agents, you know, whether it's John Summerall, whoever it may be.
Right. So he's been in.
They're planning for this.
All right. What do you think about the fact that Layla Kiffin, Lane's ex-wife and mother to his kids, her dad is John Reeves, who was a fantastic player at Florida, and she went to Florida. Does that do anything for you? What do you make of that?
I don't know. I don't know if that plays any type of role. Obviously, we don't know the personal dynamic, but it's very clear just through viewing social media that Lane Kiffin is a very committed father to raising his kids, and whatever he and Layla have chosen to done, they've raised some good young people. And he's, you know, obviously, whether he's in Oxford, Mississippi, or Gainesville, Florida, he's going to be intimately involved in their lives.
Okay.
And I don't know if that would play a big role. I really, to be honest with you, because I believe Lane Kiffin when he says money's not part of the deal here, because he already has generational wealth.
Exactly.
We're not talking about. Okay, let's just take John Summerall, okay? We're not talking about somebody who that's moving up the ranks, that would have an opportunity to sign that contract that puts him in a position to create generational wealth. That's already taken place with Lane Kiffin. Now it's about all of the other things. Do you think you can win a championship at Ole Miss versus Florida? Because at the end of the day, you know, it's the one thing that he doesn't have on his resume is he doesn't have an SEC championship game. All right, doesn't have a championship as a head coach, so that you look at that part of it, and that's probably what he's craving right now more than anything else, because the money part of it's not a factor.
And it doesn't look like they'll make the SEC championship game with Georgia beating Texas and A&M surviving against South Carolina. Georgia doesn't even play another SEC team, Luke, as you know.
Right. Oh, I know.
They play, you know, your former team, Georgia. Well, they play Charlotte this weekend, and then Georgia Tech. And look, I know nothing's guaranteed with Georgia because Brent Key and those dudes. But
Georgia Tech should have won that game last year.
Well, there's no question that was one of the best games.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept pouring another beverage thinking, well, this thing's going to end. And then all of a sudden I was like, holy moly, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
I know I ask you this all the time, but I have to keep asking because it's an in-state school. And things change week to week. And you're looking at Ohio State and Georgia. Boy, I was impressed with Georgia, Luke's. Okay. And you look at Georgia, and then Bama, weird. I thought they would win. They didn't. And A&M coming back, and there's some other teams around the country. But do you think Ole Miss has a national championship caliber squad?
Yes, I do. I think that they are a team that could contend for it. Obviously, matchups in terms of who you get paired with does play a role in all of this, right? And so, I think that, put it this way, if you were to look at Tennessee's team last year, okay, and Ole Miss this year, Ole Miss at the quarterback position has a much better chance, in my opinion, than Tennessee did with Nico.
Yeah.
Because this kid has played well against good people. And a year ago, Nico did not have a lot of success against anybody that was any good throughout the entirety of their schedule. I mean, 11 of his passing touchdowns came against Chattanooga, Kent State, I want to say Vandy potentially last year. This guy at Ole Miss has been playing lights out.
Okay. Who do you like the best right now, though? Like, who, if you had to pick a team, you're just having fun with the guys on the back patio around the grill, and your buddies in your neighborhood in Charlotte say tonight, y'all are sipping on some bourbon. They go, Lugs, who you ride? And it could change, but who you riding with right now is the team you like to make it all the way to the end?
To the end? Oh boy. I would probably say Ohio State right now. I just think that defensively where they are, and the fact that we're not giving enough credit to Julian Sand and the job he's done offensively and the growth that he's made, and the fact that he's played within himself, and now he's starting to play at a championship level. I think they're more than equipped because they've got the components up front and they've got great quarterback play. That would probably be the team. The team that you better be careful of, and you just mentioned them, is Georgia. Because the thing about Georgia is, and it wasn't too long ago, where Georgia took the field and they won the game before the ball was even kicked off. That's not necessarily this Georgia team. What this Georgia team is a blue-collar, workman-like mentality with great players. This team has had to fight and scrap and earn their way. They've had to get creative at times. They've had to, that call on the onside kick.
Wow.
The nail in the coffin. I think that Kirby smelled blood in the water and said, you know what, we're going to end this thing right now. And was it a risk? Yes. The way they were playing defense, the fact that Texas couldn't run the ball a lick, I think you take that chance, and it paid off. But I just like the grit that Georgia has. And they seem to be peaking and playing their best football right now. And Gunnar Stockton, and you can criticize Mike Bobo all you want, but Mike Bobo's had that offense ready to play.
Yeah.
And they have really turned the corner.
That was big stones of Kirby. Unbelievable call in that game. Not quite as big as Sean Payton in the Super Bowl, talking about stones, but that was a big boy call. Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN on the Out of Bounds show, driven by your next GMC Sierra truck at Fowler GMC, Pearl Brandon. Okay. How about A&M? How about A&M showing the mettle and the resolve to be down 30-3? They could have packed it in. They know things could still line up for them. And how about Elko and the team and the staff hanging in there and coming from behind and winning that game, Luke's?
I think what's interesting, and you're right, you try to figure out how in the world did that happen. My first inclination was, did Lenore Sellers and Marcel Reed change uniforms? That was my first thought. And then when I did some investigating, I realized that wasn't it. But I think it's human nature, especially with young people. And you can guard against it. You can talk about it. You can warn it. You can do exactly what I'm sure Shane Beamer did in the locker room. But the human nature will tell you to relax, right? Because you think you've got it, and you are banking on the other team doing exactly what you just said and packing it in. And the fact that A&M didn't do that tells me more about how much Mike Elko has shifted the A&M culture to a team-first mentality than anything else. Because what's been the chief complaint of Texas A&M in the NIL era?
Selfish.
They paid players. They're selfish. They're not there to win. They're there for themselves. They don't understand or have any interest in the team dynamic. And I think that more than anything else was what stood out to me in that game, because they could have folded up their lawn chair and left the beach. They could have just said, all right, well, we're gonna, if we lose, maybe we'll play hard and say, if we lose the game, we lose the game. But the way they came out, I mean, it was like a complete reversal of fortune of execution. And I don't know if I've seen the likes of that in a long, long time. It was impressive. It really was. I think the fact that they did that is going to pay huge dividends with the committee.
I agree. I agree with that. All right, so A&M and Ole Miss on a neutral field, they play 5 times. Who you got and why?
5 and 5. Or 10 times or 5? Oh, geez. I'd probably take, because of the defensive side, not Saturday notwithstanding, but that defense for Texas A&M has been so good, and especially on third down, that they have continually gotten the ball back for their offense on multiple occasions in each game. That has been the difference for them, because they've just been so elite on third down. I think it would be great to see it because, Marcel Reed was committed to Ole Miss. And he was committed to Ole Miss when nobody was really paying attention to him in recruiting. Lane targeted that guy. And what an outlook that would be to see Marcel Reed and Trinidad Chambliss play against one another. I think that is a tough call to make. I think they're both very, very similar. But, man, A&M on defense for the vast majority of the entire season has been elite.
Yeah, okay. All right. Do you think Oregon's capable of – what do you think they're capable of doing?
USC's going to the playoff. And that's something that nobody was talking about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And it's very, very real. See, the playoff scenario in all of this is going to be based off of the Big 12 and the ACC, because if you look at what the committee did last week, Bo, they put Miami at number 15. They put a team that they knew virtually had no shot of making the ACC championship game as the top-rated ACC team. So what that tells me is the committee is saying that if Virginia with 2 losses or less, if Georgia Tech with 2 losses or less are the ACC champs, they're taking 2 ACC teams because they're going to take Miami, or they would not have put them there because they had no shot at making the ACC championship game. Now, what if in the Big 12, BYU and Texas Tech play again in the championship and BYU beats them?
Ooh.
You're not. It's the scenario that you had last year with SMU. I don't see the committee leaving out Texas Tech. So now, if you're sitting there, and even though the group of 5 crapped the bed this weekend, all right, they're not going to like JMU's schedule. So how will that all materialize? And then what does that do for a Texas or an Alabama if Texas or Alabama were to lose one more? So there's still a lot of complication that is coming in all of this that is relying upon what happens in the Big 12 and the ACC.
Okay. All right. Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. It's only going to get better the next couple of weeks. The teams that have been either no losses or 1 loss, I don't think the committee's going to ding them for losing a conference championship game either. Too bad, or any. Tom Luginbill, what do you see?
They've set precedents for that. I agree with you. They said it last year with SMU. And I think they respect the fact that it's a long season.
Right.
You've earned the right to play in a championship game. There are teams out there like Notre Dame that don't have to play in one, and you put yourself out there. You've jeopardized the opportunity by having to play again. There's no way they're doing that.
Speaking of Notre Dame, you may disagree. I don't think they've got enough juice to do what they did last year. However, it looks like they're going to make it, and early in the playoffs, they could ruin somebody's season. Do you see that too?
It all depends on if Notre Dame and Miami have the same record. Now head-to-head matters. Because the Notre Dame and Miami game that was played in the first week of the season, that was not one or two teams that hadn't found themselves yet. That was a really well-played game, competitive top-to-bottom battle. And so what I mean by that is if they both finish 10-2, and let's just say Notre Dame had played poorly, the freshman quarterback didn't play well in that first week, and now fast forward to now, you look at Notre Dame and they are an entirely different team. Now maybe the head-to-head doesn't matter as much, and you give the lean to Notre Dame because you think they're better. But at some point or another, the committee is going to have to acknowledge that head-to-head matters. If everything else is equal, it has to matter, or else why are we playing the games? Mm-hmm. And why would you jeopardize yourself in the future of making a scheduled game like that? Go schedule Ball State.
Right. No, that's a great point.
If it's not going to matter. Yeah, it's not going to matter.
You mentioned Southern Cal and Oregon. It's at Oregon.
Yeah.
10.5 point favorite. You like Oregon to win the game?
I do like Oregon to win the game, but I wouldn't be surprised one bit if FC won that game.
Okay.
I think they're playing pretty decent football right now. They had to win a nail-biter in terrible weather conditions against a team in Iowa that should thrive in those conditions. And FC handled it better. And so I think that's going to be very interesting to see how that whole thing unfolds. But the thing you got to keep an eye on, you go back to this, is keep an eye on Miami. Because when the committee did that last week with not really any justification for doing it, knowing full well how difficult it would be for Miami to even make the championship game, that sent a signal, in my opinion. And then Virginia went out and ended the Duke conversation last week in dominant fashion. So that scenario has been eliminated as far as the discussion last week of the ACC potentially not having a team in. But you do, as Notre Dame's concerned, and as potentially another SEC team is concerned, what they do with Miami, if there is a 2-loss or less ACC champ, is going to be interesting.
I got 20 seconds. Do you think Lincoln Riley stays at Southern Cal or may look somewhere over in this part of the United States?
If they were to make the college football playoff, I think he would look somewhere else.
Okay. Boom. Thanks, Luginbill. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one.
National college football analyst Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show. Lunch today brought to you by Taste Italian Restaurant in the Renaissance and Taste Italian Restaurant in Starkville, Mississippi. Amazing wood-fired pizzas, pastas, appetizers, 2 beautiful, beautiful bars. Taste Italian Kitchen in the Renaissance. Make sure you get a reservation. We will see you tomorrow. Mike Detillier at 8:30.